What is up, everybody? Louie back here again for another night of fights. Not a great card, I'm going to be honest, but we got an interesting fight. UFC Vegas 77, the main event, women's bantamweight 135. HOLM taking on Myra Bueno Silva. 135 has gotten very interesting because Amanda Nunes has retired, so this fight suddenly has somewhat title implications. We'll see what happens. Possibly the winner could fight for the title next, so it's suddenly a very important fight for each woman. Also, Jack Della Maddalena is getting a fight on here. He was supposed to fight last weekend, and they found him a new opponent, so that's fun. And his opponent, HAFEZ, has a huge opportunity if he can possibly pull the upset. AZAITAR's back, and you got the Iron Turtle on this card, and you got T-Rex Terrence McKinney taking on Azim SADYKHOV, a Ray Longo guy, so should be a fun one. But let's get right into it here. 13 fights, 135 pounds, women's bantamweight. Ashley Evans-Smith taking on Ailin PEREZ. Evans-Smith, she hasn't fought in about 3 years. Her last fight, she took on Norma Dumont. In the first round, she eats some leg kicks and she presses forward some 1-2s, but a lot of her strikes are just like a little short. But she starts eating some counter jabs and some crosses. Her takedown attempt gets stuffed, and then she gets tripped from the underhook position, taken down toward the end. Then in the second round, she goes for the headlock, but then she gives up her back in the transition, and then she gives up mount, eats some nasty ground and pound, but she lands a step-in body kick, but then she eats a combination, and she'll like throw kick first instead of punches first. Then in the third round, she rushes forward and she eats some counter hooks and some straights standing at range, and then she lands a front kick, and then she'll land some step-in jabs, but she'll throw step-in jabs, they're a little too short, and then she gets dropped with an uppercut at range toward the end of the fight, and just looked a little slow for me, if I can put it simply. And then Ailin PEREZ took on Stephanie Egger her last fight. In the first round, she gets a body lock, but then she gets headlocked, and she gives up full guard for a second, but she's able to shrimp, and then she's able to get in on a single leg and stand back up and get the underhook in the clinch, but then she gets thrown with an overhook trip, but then she gives up her back, but she's able to get up, and she hurts her with a spinning back fist, and then goes with a little flurry toward the end inside the clinch. Then in the second round, she throws some wide hooks, but then she gets clinched. She has double unders, though, and then she's able to stuff the Kimura attempt. So she gets clinched with double. She gives up the double unders, and she's able to stuff the Kimura attempt, though. And then she's able to transition into side control, but she's not able to hold that position very long. She gives up the clinch, and then in the inside trip, and she gives up her back and gets rear naked choked and submitted. So yeah, so I don't know. Ashley Evans-Smith, I don't know how good of a grappler she is. Ailin PEREZ, minus 215. Ashley Evans-Smith, plus 185. Typically, you want to pick the underdog, but, I'm sorry, but Ashley Evans-Smith, she just looks slow. I know Norma Dumont is decent, but Ailin PEREZ, she's been fighting more recently, and she can at least grapple, I think. And Ashley Evans-Smith, like, she doesn't have any significant power or anything. And, Ailin PEREZ, even if she does get taken down, she's not going to settle for it. Ashley Evans-Smith looked tired toward the end of the fight, and she hasn't fought in a long time. I'm just going to go with Ailin PEREZ. It's a stupid pick, I guess, but I just really think that's who's going to win. But we'll see, man. If I'm wrong, whatever. Second fight on the card, 155 pounds, men's lightweight. Alex Munoz taking on Carl Deaton. Munoz took on Luis Pena his last fight. It was a little while ago. In the first round, he gets a double off of a low kick from Pena. Then he lands a step-in 1-2 and some leg kicks, but then he eats a jump knee, but then he's able to get the clinch off of there. Then in the second round, he kind of circles along the outside. He eats some jabs and some hooks to the body, though, but he's able to land a step-in right cross. And he's able to counter with the left, and he's able to get the double leg takedown toward the end of the fight. And then in the third round, he walks through some jabs and some straights to the head. But, he's okay. He can take some punches. But then he eats a straight in the pocket, and then he just kind of swings hooks, and then he'll shoot his double. And it was a close competitive fight, but got a little sloppy toward the end. And then Carl Deaton, he took on Joel Solecki his last fight. In the first round, he gives up the double leg and then gives up the backpack position up against the fence for the majority, basically the whole round. Then in the second round, he throws some hooks, but he gets taken out the double leg again, gives his back up, gets submitted with the rear naked choke. So it didn't look too good. Then he had a couple fights outside the promotion, and then I found a few fights before his fight in the PFL. Looking at the first round, he took on Alejandro Flores. In the first round, he just kind of looks for the teeps and some hooks, but then he gets countered with some straights or some knees. And there wasn't a lot of action that really happened. So he just kind of stands at range and looked a little tentative to me. DEATON plus 155, Alex MUNOZ minus 180. I'm going to go with Alex MUNOZ. DEATON just really doesn't do much, so the only thing I can see him winning is getting a knockout. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Alex MUNOZ will be able to implement his wrestling, and I think he'll be able to pressure him and land some big shots on the inside. Third fight of the night at 125 pounds, men's flyweight, Tyson Nam taking on MAKSUM, the UFC newcomer. Tyson Nam took on Bruno Silva his last fight. In the first round, he pressures forward with some straight shots, straight rights, and then throws some jabs. Then he eats a back fist and a hook. Then he kind of clips him with the hook off of his body kick, though. And pretty competitive first round, honestly. Not a whole lot happened, but he looked good from range. But then in the second round, he gets dropped with the front face kick, gives up his back, gets choked with the rear naked choke, gets submitted. Tough one, but I thought he looked competitive, and he was pressuring Silva a lot in the first round. And I thought the first round was competitive. And then MAKSUM, he took on Fabricio Nunes outside the promotion, Octagon Promotions or whatever it's called. In the first round, he's able to pick up the single and just chases it down. Then he's able to stack him over in full guard. Then he's able to take his back, gets a giant suplex, a couple rear naked chokes attempts with one hook in. Then he gets back on the feet. Lands a straight combo, able to get the blast double. He's able to defend the armbar once he gets him down. Then he kind of pulls and gets out to the side, pulls the Darce, gets a nice submission. So he looks pretty good, pretty aggressive. MAKSUM minus 410, Tyson Nam plus 310. We all know Tyson Nam has fight-stopping power, and that's a pretty juicy line on him. But, you know, he's a next up-and-coming guy from the Russian area of the world. And I just think that, you know, obviously he can get hit with a big shot at any time, but I think he's going to be able to take Tyson down, take his back. Don't know if he submits him or not, but I think, you know, maybe Azat just kind of feels him out in the first round, or maybe he just tries to see what Tyson's going to throw, lets him stand at range a little bit. But I think eventually Azat's going to be able to get in on the inside and get some takedowns or land some big shots. But and Tyson Nam is 39, and he's been fighting a long time, and at flyweight. And Azat, you know, they made this fight for a reason. So the price is a lot, but I'm going to go with Azat MAKSUM. But Azat by submission plus 240, not a bad price. Fourth fight of the night at 155 pounds, men's lightweight. Evan Elder taking on Gennaro Valdez. Potential for violence here. Evan Elder took on Nazim SADYKHOV his last fight. He's fighting on the card later as well. In the first round, he lands lead left hook and followed up by some body kicks, but then he gets dropped with the counter right hook off of a step and cross, but he's able to get right back up. Then he's able to drop one with the lead right hook, standing at range, and then he lands some counter lead hooks whenever he presses into him. And then in the second round, he lands a jab. He's able to get the blast double. Can't do a whole lot with it. Then he kind of gets touch up with jabs at range, but then he eats a body and a head combination kind of at range. But then he gets taken out the double, but able to get back up relatively soon. And then he just kind of rips the body on the fence, but he kind of dips his head. And I saw a position where he could be open for some counters, and then he gets clipped with a kick when he does that. Then in the third round, his double attempt gets stuffed, and he eats some kicks to the body and some knees wherever he's trying to go in for the clinch. He's forcing it a little bit, but then he gets clipped with the head kick, and then but the kick did land, and it looked like his knee cut him in the head, and they stopped it because of the cut. But you know, it's a fair and square stoppage. I thought it was a relatively competitive fight. I didn't, you know, people think he was winning the fight, maybe not, but yeah, a fair and square stoppage. You know, it wasn't from a foul. Gennaro Valdez took on Natan Levy his last fight. In the first round, he lands some front kicks and a right cross, followed up by a counter left hook, but then he gets dropped with the counter right hook whenever he lunges in, trying to land a left, and then he gets dropped with a side head kick, and then he eats another kick to the body. But then in the second round, he kind of lands some kicks and some right and left hooks at range, trying to find his range. But then he's able to land a counter hook flurry whenever he gets pressed, and then he eats a head kick, just kind of standing at range. Then he gets taken down with the single and gets clinched up to the fence, and gets taken down with an inside trip toward the end of the round. But then in the third round, he lands a leg kicks and a lunge right and left hook forward. But then he walks into a couple front kicks and some hooks, followed up by an uppercut and combination. He just kind of can't get out of the way. Eats a lot of punches in the combo. But then he walks right into a double and gives up his back, and he's not able to get free off of there. Not a great performance. He had his moments. He did kind of fade in the second and the third round, though. Genaro Valdez plus 255. Evan Elder minus 305. Yeah, I think Evan Elder's the more technically sound guy, and I think Genaro Valdez might get hurt a little bit because Genaro Valdez is the guy that Matt Frevola dropped like 8 times in the first round. So I get that, but Evan Elder minus 305, that's just not sitting right with me for some reason. And say what you will, Genaro Valdez, he can hurt guys, and you know, Evan Elder can be hit. Nazim hurt him a little bit. And, you know, both these guys are on 2 losses in a row technically, so both guys, the fighter's going to be under them. So I just have this feeling about Genaro Valdez. I think he can get in there and make it dirty, maybe hurt Evan Elder, who knows. But if one of these guys is going to get a huge knockout, I feel like it's Genaro Valdez for some reason, plus 255. I'm going to go with Genaro. We'll see what happens. 5th fight of the night at 145 pounds, men's featherweight. Austin Lingo taking on Melquizal Costa. Austin Lingo fought Austin Landmer his last fight. In the first round, he lands some jabs and some lead hooks, but then he eats a counter hook in return. But then he lands a lunge hook, but it gets countered with an uppercut. But he lands some straight standing at range. Throws them. They're a little too short. But then he's able to start finding his jabs, lands a couple nice jabs. But then he lands a counter right and a left hook off of Nate Landwehr's knee. But then in the third round, he lands a left to the body, followed up by an overhand right. Then he lands, second round, and then he lands some jabs, but he kind of overswings his overhands, and Nate Landwehr's kind of making him miss. Then he gets pressed with the clinch, but he eats some head and body kicks, and he misses a straight shot. It's kind of lunging forward a little bit, gets taken down with a body lock, and he gives up his back, eats up punch on the ground around the back, gives up the rear naked choke position. Whenever he tries to sit out, and Landwehr was waiting for it, gets submitted to rear naked choke. You know, what are you going to do? Then Melk Costa took on Thiago Moisés' last fight at 155, and this was his UFC debut. I believe it was on relatively short notice, and Thiago Moisés is pretty good. People kind of forget about him. But in the first round, he's able to stuff the double, but then he gets clinched up against the fence, gets foot swept, but he's able to stay on his side, and he's always working for that shrimp. He's eventually able to get up to his feet. Then he eats some counter hooks whenever he throws his front kick. But then in the second round, he lands a head kick followed up by a 1-2. Then he eats a counter hook, kind of standing at range there too long. But then he gets taken out with a blast double, gives up his back, gets submitted to the rear naked choke. Not a great performance, but Thiago Moisés is a tough first UFC fight, for being honest. Before that, he took on Junior Mello in the LFA. In the first round, he rushes with the 1-2. Then he lands a knee to the body. But then he hits a body kick and a 1-2 counter. But then he rushes forward with some hooks. And, you know, he's trying to get that back. But then he drops him with the back kick to the body. And he kind of rushes some hooks inside the pocket. But then he gets clinched, but he's able to reverse the clinch. But then he gets caught in a guillotine. And then he gets head and arm thrown off of there. But, you know, and I didn't watch the rest of the fight, but, you know, he looked good, and he was landing some big shots. So he's got potential there. Melcal Costa, minus 230. Austin Lingo, plus 195. Similar line to the previous fight, a little lower. I don't like this line on Costa. I just don't think Lingo can hang in there with him for the whole fight. And I think Melk is going to be able to get inside of him, get inside the pocket, and land some big shots. And, you know, I just watching the tape, I like how he looks, and he's up and coming. Austin Lingo, he kind of needs to make something happen here. And, you know, he had a tough debut, so the UFC might be trying to throw him a bone here a little bit. And I just think he's going to be able to get inside, land some big shots, and I think he can go for the whole fight. I'm going to go with Melcal Costa, minus 230. A little pricey, but it's just one of those fights I have a feeling about, and I'm probably going to be wrong, but we'll see. 6th fight on the card at 115 pounds, women's strawweight. Victoria Dudakova taking on Estela Nunes. Dudakova took on Maria Silva on Dana White's Contender Series. In the first round, she's able to get the body lock hip toss right into full guard, lands a little bit of ground and pound, but then whenever she gets back up, she keeps the clinch, able to take her down with the wizard kick again. Then in the second round, she gets a clinch, but she kind of pulls her on top. Looks like she's going for a foot sweep or a lateral drop, and she fails, pulls her on top of her. And then she gives up mount position, really bad position for her, actually. But then she gets clinched up to the fence, but then she's able to get a takedown with another wizard kick. But then she just kind of rolls. She rolls on her ankle like it was an injury, and then she kind of falls back. But she dives for her leg, but then she eats some ground and pound at the end of that round, which is a little concerning. But then in the third round, she eats a jab, but then she's able to get a single on the mat. And she gets right into side control, like a lower single, finishes it on the mat, right into side control, lands some nice ground and pound, and she's able to take her back for the rest of the round. Good way to finish up. And then Estela Nunes, she took on Yasmin Uruguay, her last fight. In the first round, she drops her whenever she goes for a leg kick with a big overhand right. And then she kind of circles on the outside. She lands some elite hook, but then she eats a counter combo. But she's able to land a counter left, and she kind of circles out of range. But then she eats a jab and some straight rights, followed up at the end. Then in the second round, she eats a counter straight whenever she goes for a flurry. Or she lands counter straight flurry whenever she's winding up for a hook, looking to land a big shot. And then she gets dropped with an elbow in the clinch. And then she's able to break free back at range. And then she gets dropped with a perfectly placed straight right at range. And she eats some nasty ground and pound, gets TKO'd. So it's a little tough. But Estela Nunes, plus 165. Victoria Dudakova, minus 195. Yeah, I'm going to go with the underdog on this one because low-level women's MMA, plus Dudakova's coming off Contender Series, and she's a favorite. And, you know, she rolled her ankle in the last fight, so who knows? Estela Nunes has some type of power. She might be able to hurt her. Who knows? Plus 165. I'm going to go with Estela Nunes. Main event of the prelims at 145 pounds. Men's featherweight, Tucker Lutz taking on Baghdasaryan. Tucker Lutz took on Daniel Pineda his last fight in a shocking upset. In the first round, he lands a jab and a cross. Then he gets taken out with the body lock trip. He pops right back up, though. So then he presses forward with some straights. He lands a 1-2, followed by a left hook. But then he gets dropped with a counter right hook. And then he eats some leg kicks at range. But then he eats an overhand right, standing at range as well. Then in the second round, he gets beat with the right hook in the pocket. Whenever they're in a firefight, he always getting hit with that right hook, it seemed like. Then his double attempt gets stuffed, but he eats some knees from the front headlock position. Then he gets caught in a guillotine. Then he gives up full guard. Then he gets caught in a guillotine yet again, leaves his neck exposed, and then gets submitted. So just disappointing performance from him. And yeah, just seemed a little lackadaisical. And then Baghdasaryan took on Josh Kulabau his last fight. In the first round, he lands a body kick. He lands some counter hooks and a nice straight shot. But then he presses forward with some front kicks, and he's looking pretty good on the feet, I think. And then in the second round, he lands some front kicks. Then he gets pushed to the ground whenever he throws his leg kick, and he gives up his back and gets submitted with the rear naked choke. And I thought he was winning the fight, the whole fight up until that point, and it was unfortunate. And it just looked like he got caught off guard, because I thought he looked pretty good, and he got like knocked down whenever he threw his kick. So as long as he got taken down. Baghdasaryan minus 150, Tucker Lutz plus 130. I just can't trust Tucker Lutz, unfortunately. And like I said, Baghdasaryan, I think he's a little bit cleaner of the striker. I think Tucker Lutz will look good in the first round, but you know, I think Melsik is going to be able to pressure him, and you know, Tucker Lutz, he gets hurt kind of easily. And I just didn't like the last performance from him. The line's not too far apart. I'm going to go with Baghdasaryan here. I just had a good feeling about him watching the tape more than anything. First fight on the main card at 155 pounds. Nazim, the Black Wolf, SADYKHOV taking on Terrence T-Rex McKinney. This one's going to be extremely violent. Nazim took on Alvin Elder before. I kind of went over that one. And then before that, on the Contender Series, he took on Ahmad Hassazada. In the first round, he hurts him with the back kick to the body. He's able to stop the shot, and then he lands some nasty elbows on top. But then he gets reversed whenever he's trying to take his back, but no big deal there. But then he's able to keep the whizzer on the fence, and he can land some elbows in the fence, makes him pay for it when he's done it on the single. But then in the second round, he gets clipped with the head kick, but he's able to land a lunge jab after it, and then he lands a right hook to the body, and then a left cross to the head. But then he gets taken out of the double, but he's stalking forward with some overhand lefts, and then he stuffs a single on the fence, so pretty good takedown defense. But then he drops him with the hook to the body toward the end of the round. Then in the third round, he's parrying the jab, and then he lands a nice left cross, picture perfect almost. Then he's able to counter the clinch. He gets the clinch, lands a couple counter uppercuts and hooks inside the pocket whenever they want to bang in the pocket. He's able to slip the left hook, but then he eats a couple straight shots whenever he's just kind of standing at range. Didn't really like that. But then he lands a right hook to the body and then to the head along the fence. KO, devastating knockout. So he looked pretty good. And then Terrence McKinney took on Ismail Bonfim his last fight. In the first round, he eats a counter left hook off of his step-in cross, but he's able to stuff a takedown attempt, and then he's able to get a body lock. But then he gets dropped with the right hook off of his left hand, but then he gets the underhook up against the fence, and he kind of pulls him down, and he pulls him down to the mat, tries to take his back, but then he gets reversed off of that. And he seemed like he was a little desperately trying to get the takedown, it seemed like. But then in the second round, he lands a jab and then a left hook, and he swings left hook, but he misses. Then he eats a counter uppercut for his troubles. Then he lands and he eats a couple hooks, and his double attempt gets stuffed, and he's kind of in panic mode a little bit at this point. But then he eats a hook to the body and an overhand up against the fence. But then he eats a straight to the body, and then followed by a left and right hook off of his knee. And then he's going for a level change. His back's up against the fence. And then Bonfim lands a picture-perfect knee when he dips his head down, knocks him out cold. It was tough to watch, man, because he was so promising. And still might be, but he's been on a rough road. Terrence McKinney, plus 135. Nazim, minus 155. And this is kind of a tough one for me. I don't know, like, if I should chill on Terrence McKinney, but I'd bet him against Bonfim. And, you know, Nazim, not really a wrestler. His striking isn't, like, terribly clean. He's got some power, but he doesn't have more power than Terrence McKinney. Terrence McKinney is going to try to finish it in the first round. I think Nazim is better off if it goes 3 rounds. But my thing is, maybe Terrence McKinney does try to slow this fight down because he's on 2 losses and he got knocked out his last fight, and he's young. Maybe he's changing his approach to the game. Maybe he goes for the takedowns a lot. Maybe he goes for the clinches. And he's a slight underdog. I'm going to go with Terrence McKinney. I don't know. We'll see. I hope it's not the fall of Terrence McKinney. You know, Nazim looked good in his last fight, but he can be outstruck. And, you know, minus 155 for him. I don't feel that confident in him. But the fight to go over 1.5 rounds, plus 155, not a bad take, but I'm going to go with T-Rex on this one. Second fight on the main card at 145 pounds, women's featherweight. You got Norma Dumont taking on Chelsea Chandler. Should be a fun one. Kind of a big fight for featherweight. Who knows what's happening with featherweight, but still, whoever wins this fight has got to be ranked pretty high up there at this point. Norma Dumont took on Kale Rosa her last fight. In the first round, she gets double underhooks up against the fence, and she lands a step-in overhand and then a short hook with a lead overhand, and then followed up by a jab. Pretty nice combo. But then in the second round, she lands some jabs, and she lands a lunge straight rights, and she lands some hooks from the clinch, and then she gets double unders, but then she gets reversed up against the fence. Most of her fights are clinch fest for a long time, but in the third round, she eats a straight off of her leg kick, and then she gets blitzed, but then she's able to get the clinch, but she gets reversed from that position. She hits the headlock, but she's not able to keep it down there for any meaningful time. Then she gets dropped with the 1-2 at the end of the fight when she's loading the hook. She gets right back up, though, but still, you know, so she gave up that third round, and Kale Rosa came on really strong in the third round, and if she would have done that for another round, who knows if she could have won the fight, so. And then Chelsea Chandler took on Julia Stoliarenko her last fight. In the first round, she walks right into a double leg and gets mounted, but she's able to reverse. She uses an armbar attempt, reverse the position. Then they get back up to the feet. She lands a left hook, followed by an overhand right at range. She presses forward with some 1-2s. She's able to stuff the double leg attempt. And then she just hips into her, gets mount immediately, pretty aggressively. And then she stalks forward with some short lefts. And then she pancakes her again, gets the mount, just goes off with the ground and pound, elbows, big punches, gets a TKO finish. She looked really good, all in the first round. Chelsea Chandler, plus 155. Norma Dumont, minus 135. I'm going to go with Chelsea Chandler. I think Norma Dumont is the bigger woman, and she does have a good clinch game, but Chelsea Chandler hits harder. I think she's a more active striker. She's got solid takedown defense. And Norma Dumont, not really a big takedown person. Doesn't really get a lot of takedowns, just clinches. If Chelsea Chandler can pummel out of those clinches and land some big shots, Norma Dumont doesn't have a ton of activity. She's a slight underdog. I'm going to go with Chelsea. Third fight on the main card at 185 pounds, men's middleweight. Could be a banger, could be a boring clinch fest. Albert DURAEV taking on the Iron Turtle, Jun Young Park. Albert DURAEV took on Chidi Njokuani his last fight. In the first round, he catches a kick, gets a lift, treetop, trip, single, takes his back, gets one hook in, gets the cross wrist. some ground and pound. Second and third round don't go so easy for him. In the second round, he walks right into a cross, and then he eats a right cross off of his lunge jab, and then he lands a lead left hook, but then he eats a 1-2 counter off of it. Slows down the activity dramatically. Then in the third round, he eats a hard kick to the body, kind of pushes him back, but then he eats a jab, but he's not able to finish the single leg up against the fence. Then he lands a lunge straight right, and he lands a right cross. But then he eats a jab off of his, when he loads up for the overhand, eats a nasty jab, and Ninja Kwani stings him pretty much every time he touches him. So, and then Jung Young Park took on Dennis Tiuli in his last fight. In the first round, he lands some jabs and some leg kicks, but then he gets clipped countered with a couple jabs, but he's able to duck under the overhand, and he gets a double, transitions to an outside trip up against the fence, pulls him off the fence, then he gets it right in him out, lands some elbows, and once he turns over, gets a rear naked choke submission. You know, pretty easy stuff for him. He took on Joseph Holmes before that, same thing, but neither one of those guys are wrestlers. But then he took on Eric Anders 3 fights ago. A really competitive fight, but I just kind of noticed he gets pressed with some jabs by Anders, and then Anders would clinch him up against the fence, and he had some trouble getting out of there. And he just kind of looks for counter hooks whenever Anders is coming into him mostly. So, and yeah, the DURAEV competent wrestler, but in his last fight, he barely wrestled. So, I don't know. But Jung Young Park minus 150, Albert DURAEV plus 130. Flip a coin, I guess. I guess should go with the underdog, but I just don't know if Jung Young Park's going to get out wrestled. I don't know how heavy DURAEV is going to be in the wrestling department. I know DURAEV does get tired as the fight goes on. Jung Young Park, pretty solid cardio. And if Jung Young Park can somehow get it down, he is nasty on the ground. He's a finisher on there. And if he doesn't finish him, he's going to cut him open probably. So, I'm going to go with Jung Young Park. I think he's more battle-tested. He's been in a lot of fights, a lot of experience. Line's pretty close. I'm going to go with the Iron Turtle on this one. Fourth fight on the main card at 155 pounds, men's lightweight. Ottman AZAITAR, the Potato Man, taking on Francisco Prado. Should be a fun one. Should be violent. AZAITAR, he took on Matt Favola his last fight. In the first round, he kind of circles along the outside. He eats a 1-2 whenever he's throwing his hook. He lands a step-in overhand followed by a front kick. Then he eats a counter right hook off of his left hook. And then he's kind of rushes hooks and overhands. And then he eats a check right hook and then a left hook and just gets knocked out cold. He just kind of rushes Matt Favola, didn't have any respect for him, left his chin wide open, man. Not too much to talk about there. His last fight was a while ago, and then he had that suspension. So, and that fight, you know, he got a knockout in the first round, but it's not a lot of information from his fights. And then Francisco Prado, he took on Jamie Malarkey his last fight. In the first round, he lands a counter left hook off of it overhand, but then he gets taken out of the double at space. And then he eats some ground and pound and full guard. Tries to go for the Kimura. Can't really get it, though. But then in the second round, he is able to land some hooks, but then he shoots a single leg, but it gets stuffed by Malarkey a little too far out. Then he lands an uppercut to the body, but then he eats a counter hook. And then he eats a counter left hook in the pocket whenever he's throwing his cross. But he's landing a little bit in there, but Malarkey's just like a second ahead of him whenever he's landing the counters. Then in the third round, he slips the jab, and then he's able to land a nice counter hook. And then he gets taken out with the blast double whenever he's stepping in, trying to throw an overhand. But then he's able to reverse the position with the Kimura and get on top for like 20 seconds. But then he's not able to keep the position and then just get back on his feet. So, you know, but that was his first fight in the UFC. You know, Jamie Malarkey is not an easy first fight either. So, Francisco Prado minus 110, Ottman AZAITAR minus 110. I'm going to go with Francisco Prado. We just don't know enough about Ottman AZAITAR. Yes, he can knock anybody out in the first round, I guess, but I like Francisco Prado. Why not? Ottman, how bad does he want to fight? He hasn't fought in a while. You know, and Francisco Prado, you know, he got a tough test against Jamie Malarkey. I think he can get it done. Even money. I'm going to go with Francisco. Okay. Feature co-main event of the evening at 170 pounds, men's welterweight. Jack Della Maddalena taking on Brazil HAFEZ. Finally found a new opponent for him. Glad he gets the fight. Jack Della, he took on Randy Brown his last fight. In the first round, he kind of circles, and he'll back out of the straight shots, kind of stays right outside of range. But then he gets clipped with some teeps whenever he's trying to come forward a little bit. But then he just kind of presses forward with some straights on the fence. And then he drops him with the right hook. Whenever he's circling out, perfectly placed right hook. Then he takes his back, gets a rear naked choke submission. Tries to go for that ground and pound, but then he goes for the rear naked choke submission. Who would have thought he would have got a submission? Gets it done. Pretty good victory. Randy Brown, solid guy. So, You know, and all the Jack's fights in the first round pretty much. And then Basil Hafez, he took on Evan Cutts in Fury FC. This will be his UFC debut. In the first round, he throws the overhand right just to go into the clinch, but then he eats some jabs standing at range, but then he lands a jab and some right crosses, and he kind of crowds him, and then he drops him with an overhand right, and then he eats a step-in uppercut. But then he's able to land a right over top of Evan Cutts' jab, be able to time it pretty well. And then in the second round, he rocks him with an overhand counter, and then a counter over top of his straight. Then he lands some short counter hooks inside the pocket whenever they're kind of just throwing with each other. Then in the third round, he gets rushed with an uppercut, but then he's able to step back, land a counter right hook, and then he lands a left hook counter off of his leg kick. Then he's able to drop him with a check right hook whenever he's coming into him, and just gets a knockout. So, perfectly placed right hook and pretty good timing. Looks pretty good cardio-wise. So, you know, this guy's no joke for Jack Della. But Basil Hafez plus 460, Jack Della Maddalena minus 670. Maybe you want to bet on Basil Hafez, but I just didn't see enough that he's going to beat Jack Della Maddalena. He might give him some trouble. The fight might go over the first round. But Jack Della, you know, he's pretty good at staying away from guys. Basil's kind of a counter puncher. I think Jack Della is going to be able to rush him. I think he's going to be able to get reads on him. Hafez did land some good counter shots over top of jabs, but I think Jack Della's going to do what he kind of did to Randy Brown. He's going to rush him, make him make a mistake, circle to his power side, clip him with the big shot. He's got power, and Basil Hafez has power, but not like Jack Della Maddalena. So I'm going to go with Jack Della Maddalena, minus 670. Insane. But submission, plus 600. Why not? I'm going to go with Jack. On to the main event of the night, 135 pounds, women's bantamweight. You got a big one here. Number 3, Holly Holm, the preacher's daughter, taking on, I believe, like number 13, Mayra Bueno Silva. Ranking doesn't really matter, though. If Mayra Bueno Silva wins this fight, she's in the title talks. If Holly Holm wins this fight, maybe she'll finally get her long-deserved title shot. Basically, it's a title eliminator, I guess. Who knows what's going on with this division, though. But, you know, you want to stay in the title conversation, this win is necessary for either woman. So, a lot on the line here. And hopefully it'll be a fun fight. Holly Holm took on Yana Santos, her last fight in the first round. She gets clinched up to the fence, but she's able to pummel out, lands a nice elbow on the break, and then she lands an overhand left. She's able to stuff the clinch attempt, lands some front kicks, and then she's able to get a takedown with a knee pick, and just rides her out for the rest of the time. And then in the second round, she lands a step-in hook to a body lock trip right in a half guard, lands some nice ground and pound, transition to side control, maybe looking to set up a Kimura or an arm triangle or something like that, but then she's just using this time also to set up the crucifix, lands some nasty some elbows from there, then she transitions to mount, lands some more ground and pound, nasty stuff. She's working for the finish. Then in the third round, she's able to slip the hook, gets another body lock trip, able to take the back, gets one hook in, kind of goes for the rear naked choke, but doesn't fully commit to it. But then she's able to take half guard again, lands some more nasty ground and pound, finishes the fight, dominant victory. Looked really good. And Mayra Bueno Silva, she took on Lena Landsberg her last fight. And Landsberg was number 15, so, you know, no joke. In the first round, she landed some leg kicks at range. She landed some jabs, and followed by a hook, then a spinning back kick to the body. But then she gets clipped with a hook, and an hook and an elbow from the collar tie. But then she's able to get out of there, and she's able to reverse the clinch. She's able to get her on the back, drag her down to the mat. Doesn't do a whole lot with it, but decent control for the rest of the round. Competitive first round. Then in the second round, she gets an underhook, and then she's able to step through, gets a hip toss, and then she's able to go right into half guard. She's able to transition and take her back whenever Lena Landsberg turns over. She's able to lock up that body triangle. But then Lena Landsberg is able to explode into her, but she goes for the armbar, and then Lena Landsberg kind of stands up and backs away. And then Mayra rolls for her ankle, is able to transition to a knee bar, gets a submission just like that in like 5 seconds. So she's tricky, she's nasty, she's dangerous. Holly Holm's got to be careful. Mayra Bueno Silva plus 140, Holly Holm minus 165. You know, I don't think anybody has a great read on this fight. Holly Holm's 41. She looks really good though. She looks better than she's ever looked in her last fight, arguably. But I don't know if I want to bet minus 165 on her. Holly Holm probably is the better striker, but Mayra Bueno Silva, she can get in the pocket and she can land big shots. Holly Holm's going to try to clinch her a bunch. I think Silva's going to be able to do okay in there as long as she doesn't take any big shots against Holly. I wonder if Holly's going to be aggressive on the takedowns. Maybe not. Maybe they stay on the feet a lot. But, you know, it's a 5-round fight. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for Mayra to go for some sort of submission. Maybe Holly does go for a takedown, and maybe Mayra locks up something. Maybe she's getting beat up, locks up an armbar or a triangle or an E-bar. I just think there's a lot of opportunities for Mayra here, and I think she can hang in there on the feet. I don't think Holly Holm's going to like dominate her striking-wise. I think Mayra might even be able to catch her with something big. And, you know, she's an up-and-comer. Holly Holm, she's had a couple title shots. You know, maybe it's time for some new blood in the division. Plus 140. I'm going to go with Mayra Bueno Silva, but I hope it's a fun fight either way. All right, everybody, thanks for riding with me. I appreciate it. Like, share, subscribe, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, all that stuff. Leave a comment down below. Let me know how you guys did. Give me some advice. I could always use it. Let's see some upsets. Let's see some violence. And let's see some profits. Good luck, everyone.